I truly don't understand how people film videos under all these lights and not burn to death. Hello, filmmaker. Welcome back. If you're new, hi, I'm Monica Bryant, and this channel is a living document of my journey as a filmmaker. I'm going to talk to you about my favorite films by women that have basically changed my life. So we'll start from number 12, which is Year of the Carnivore, written and directed by Sook-Yin Lee. The reason why I love this film so much is because it's about a girl exploring her sexuality, and she's very new to it and doesn't know how to be sexy, and actually gets rejected by a guy that she likes because he thinks that she's not experienced enough. And Sook-Yin Lee talks about how she drew from her own life.
Even on the radio with the NTO, tell me about that decision to out yourself in the way you have.
I don't know what it is. It's like I'm compelled to, like I'm constantly trying to work through things in my life, and those questions always arise in my work. And I figure if I'm going through, like, people are pretty similar, and I have really appreciated when other people share things with me, and I've learned through other people's stories, and I can't help but sort of wrestle with those things and share and kind of go, what the heck is happening here? And then try to facilitate some sort of conversation. I think that's important. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it was being raised Roman Catholic and Chinese, double whammy. But there's a kind of confessional thing.
Psychology 101.
Yeah.
Cue rebel.
Uh-oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I wish I was one of those writers that could suddenly access my imagination and, write a tale that takes place 200 years ago on a far away land. But I don't have that kind of imagination. I really do have to write and express from that which I know, or that which is confusing to me.
I learned that I can be really vulnerable with my films. I can talk about deep-rooted things that are very personal because it's also very humanizing, and a lot of people go through the same things, and to see your own experience reflected in a film can mean a lot to you. Number 11 is The Babadook, written and directed by Jennifer Kent. I love Jennifer Kent's approach to directing because The Babadook, while a horror story, also has to do a lot with grief. And there was a scene in the film where the mother is like screaming at her son and telling him that she wished he was dead. And it was so heartbreaking and sad. But listening to the way the director handled that scene is amazing.
You don't know how many times I wished it was you, not him, that died.
I just want you to be happy.
I just want you to be happy.
In this particular scene, if I actually put Noah in that situation where Essie was saying those things to him, that would be child abuse.
I just want to smash your head against a brick wall until your brains pop out.
So we shot these scenes separately. Essie was acting to a person on their knees, an adult.
6 years old and you're still wetting yourself.
Noah was acting to Essie on that trolley that she was on, with me sitting on there too. And he knew that we were just playing games. He really loved his Lego. So Essie was saying things like, I'm going to take all your Lego and I'm going to shove it in a bag and pour cement in it and throw it into the river. And he was furious about that. There were little, tricks that we were able to use to get him to this space of fear and then fury.
I learned that I want to be the kind of director that if I ever cast a child in my film, that I would do my best to protect them and not abuse them on set. I just think it's important to have respect for your actors, especially if you're working with kids. Number 10 is Take This Waltz, written and directed by Sarah Polley. The reason I love this movie so much is because it explores the idea of life just naturally having a gap, and you don't have to go crazy trying to fill it up. Like, a character literally says that in a movie, and it just raises questions about wanting something new and not appreciating what you have.
I mean, I think one of the things that Margot, the main character, really grapples with is the idea of whether or not familiarity and passion are compatible, or do they cancel each other out? And so I feel like there's a sense in their relationship, as in many relationships, after 5 or 6 years, when that honeymoon period is over.
Honestly, it taught me to ask the really big questions about life and about the human experience and really dive in deep. Number 9 is Pariah, written by Dee Rees. The reason I love Pariah so much is because it's about a young girl experiencing something and questioning her sexuality and just trying to deal with that. And the movie doesn't come with it from like a black perspective, even though the character is black. It's just a very genuine human experience. I also appreciate the fact that Dee is the type of person that is very resourceful and smart. When she's trying to figure out how am I going to get my movie made, she will get her movie made and figure it out.
In terms of like locations, we couldn't afford a location manager, so we hired a realtor. This woman named Jackie Weeks, who like knew Brooklyn and who knew, and
that's so smart.
Exactly, and like who knew this woman who was trying to sell her brownstone and it wasn't selling. This is like pre-gentrified Brooklyn, and so we said, we'll pay your mortgage for the next 2 months, so then that way you get a whole brownstone for like $2,000. Well, like back then. And so then we shot like all the interiors, well, like most of them in this brownstone. So like one floor was Alike's house, one floor was Laura's house, one floor was Bina's house. And so, you just like find ways. And then like we got a school to like let us like shoot in their school. And then we got a church to let us shoot like outside the church. We couldn't shoot in church. They're like, okay, but you guys can shoot on the sidewalk in front of the church. And so it was, cobbled together that way. When you're making independent film, you kind of just go like where the love is and who lets you into their space and who gives you their labor or their time. And then you hope it all pays out. And then at Sundance, like it actually sold and we're able to pay everybody back. So, yeah.
That's the kind of director I want to be. I want to get my movie made at whatever cost. Number 8, Middle of Nowhere, written and directed by Ava DuVernay. I love Middle of Nowhere because it shows a different perspective. You have a husband and wife. The husband is incarcerated, and she could have chosen to show his side of the story and what happens in jail and what happens in prison, and she does that later with, another movie. But I love that we get to explore, well, what happens to the wife? What happens to the people that aren't incarcerated? And you see throughout the story that the woman is actually incarcerated too.
Middle of Nowhere is a love story. It's a complicated love story. Ruby is a happily married woman who loses her husband to incarceration. And while he's serving time, she's also serving time. You always see these stories and the women are like leaving the prison and then you follow the inmates. You follow the incarcerated man. What happens to her? Where did she go? I wanted to follow her. And so I just wanted to be true to that story. I spoke with many women, dozens and dozens of women over the 2-3 years that I was tinkering on this while I was doing my other job. In my neighborhood, I saw this all the time. This kind of epidemic of incarceration really affects Black and brown communities disproportionately. And the stories and the refrains was always the same. No matter what the crime was, no matter what the relationship was, whether it was a mother, a daughter, a sister, a wife, it always came down to a person who's not dead. They're alive. They're just not physically with you, and how you maintain that relationship with this kind of ghost, who's there but's not there. When you really get down to it, that's the struggle.
I've learned to look at the other side of a story. If I'm coming up with something, look at the other character. Can I tell this story from the other character's point of view? Number 7 is Harriet the Spy. The novel's written by Louise Fitzhugh, but the movie was directed by Bronwyn Hughes. I love Harriet the Spy because it is one of my childhood classics. It came in the Nickelodeon Orange VHS cassette tape, and I just love that movie so much. It taught me so much about friendship, about how I shouldn't talk crap about people behind their backs if I'm not prepared to stand by what I said. And also, just never underestimate the power of a children's story.
One of my biggest pieces of advice is that, I actually went to film school, which was a great learning experience, but No one has ever asked to see my diploma. What they ask for is, if you are a director and you say, hire me, I'm a director, they say, show me what you've directed, right? Or if you want to be a cameraman or a camerawoman, show me what you've shot, show me what you've edited, show me what you've sound recorded, you know. And the lucky thing about the digital technology right now, and cutting it in Final Cut Pro on your laptop, and the 5D, or even my little, you know, Lumix, which shoots full frame, full res HD, you can actually go out and make a calling card, a short, some kind of demonstration of your skills. So I really recommend that people just make things, you know. And then the only piece of advice I add to that is that when you are going to make something as a short or as a calling card, the trick is, I think, to conceive of something that you can really manage well, not to shoot yourself in the foot by saying, I'm doing the next Star Wars, but it's just you and a camera and your kitchen, you know. So conceive of something that you can manage well, and then you'll have a really nice piece to show.
Number 6, Jennifer's Body, written by Diablo Cody and directed by Karin Kasama. The beautiful thing about Jennifer's Body is that it's finally finding its audience. Diablo Cody talked about how she couldn't even talk about this movie for a decade because the marketing was handled so poorly. But now the movie is finally finding people who love it. And I love the movie from the day it came out. It was just marketed towards the wrong audience. It should have been marketed towards young women, and it wasn't. Hopefully they learn their lesson and they don't do that kind of thing in the future. But Karin Kasama's interview is interesting because they don't ask her about Jennifer's Body, at least I don't think they do, but she talks about how she loves independent film because there's a lot of freedom there, and independent film is where you find the people who really want to be there.
For me, particularly now, I have to say that I would always want to be an independent filmmaker. I'm at a point where I feel like there are great advantages to working in the studio system, and if the circumstances are right, it's still a very worthy path to pursue. But for me, working in independent film, there's a sense of love and a sense of sacrifice that everyone shares by being there. It's almost just a prerequisite that you're there simply to make the movie, because you're really not there to make money. It's just not a it's just never a guarantee when you're making movies for not a lot of money. So I feel like that unites people, and the people who sort of you collect in the process who are going to work with you to make your movie end up being people who really want to be there. And I think that doesn't always have to be the case in studio filmmaking, and that's definitely one of the #1 advantages to working independently.
And that's what I want. I want to find my people who really want to be with me. Number 5 is Girlhood, written and directed by Céline Sciamma. So Céline is a French filmmaker, a white woman who noticed that she didn't see a lot of black girls on screen. Nobody told their stories. And she would see all these black girls in London, and she was so curious about them. And she scouted actual, real people from the street to be in her movie. She didn't go hire actors, and told a very just brilliant story about, Mariam's whole path to finding herself. And the description that is written on IMDb, I really have beef with, because it talks about how she's in a gang. At no point does she ever join a gang, but it's just a beautiful film and just makes me want to be the type of person that can look at other cultures and see the beauty underneath all of the stereotypes.
Well, it was, going back to that matter of the construction of femininity, but in a different way than before, because it's less intimate. It's more an encounter that I made with those girls that I kept seeing in the streets of Paris, passing by those groups of girls with this great energy, charisma, style, and this solidarity, I really wanted to look at them. I was, attracted, and it's a good starting point for a film when you want so badly to look at someone. And in the meantime, I thought that they are never looked at, black girls in French cinema. They're invisible. They don't exist. And so I figured, okay, I have like the intimate urge to look at them. And there's also maybe a collective urge to do so. So I decided to go for it.
Number 4 is Electric Children, written and directed by Rebecca Thomas. I love Electric Children. I have a whole video about how I think Rachel got pregnant and who did it to her. And one of the things I love about Rebecca Thomas is that she is so true to her vision. And she's like, look, I just want people to go on this ride with Rachel, and I want them to believe that she believes that this miracle happened. And honestly, when I'm watching the film, I do believe the character believes that, but you know, there's this very human part of me that's like, but no, somebody did. And I don't want to forget to tell, you know, a fantastic story about people leaving their real lives and going into this like otherworldly experience. I want to be able to play and have fun. Number 3 is Clueless, written and directed by Amy Heckerling. Clueless is just fun. Clueless was a great movie. Flipping between, we had a free couple of months of HBO, and we were also watching the O.J. Simpson trial. So when the O.J. Simpson trial was done for the day, we would go to HBO, and then Clueless would be on like almost every time. I watched it a million times. It's so quotable. I love it. It's so relevant. I just love Clueless so much, and I think Amy Heckerling is amazing, and I just want to channel her in every project that I create.
Were the kids at times just totally unwieldy, or did you find a way to just really yank their chains and get them in order?
You know, I had really great kids, so, you know, this was sort of an easy one to do. They were all real gung-ho. They were all excitable. They were just happy to be in a movie. They were just real energetic, and they would come to the set when they weren't working. They just wanted to see what else was going on. They became friends. So it was a lot of fun working with them.
Number 2 is A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, written and directed by Annalini Amirpour. Annalini Amirpour. Oh my God, I butchered her name. I'm so sorry. I feel so bad. But I love her movie so much. I watched it on a whim when it was on Netflix, and I fell in love with that film. First of all, I love vampires. If you love vampires, you need to watch that movie. And it's like a vampire western that takes place in a fictional Iranian town, and it is so beautifully shot. It is so beautifully acted. I love the dialogue. I love the costumes. I just love everything about that movie, and I just want to meet her and be friends with her in real life. Please, please. From my lips to God's ears.
A film is like a dream. It's the opportunity to work inside of a dream. A film is really a place of the mind. There's something fantastical about the world of a film. I was telling an Iranian story about Iranian characters in this Iranian place, and of course I always knew I would never be doing it in Iran. First of all, I'm not an Iranian who lives in Iran. I live in, California. Because of the content of the film, even if I wanted to, I probably would never be able to shoot a film like this there. And so it's kind of, in a way, Bad City became like our Iran, because it became really a true mashup of all the things that we are, which is our parents and our parents' Iran, but also America and Europe and all these influences of pop culture that we grew up on. It kind of became a place for all of us.
And number 1, in no particular order, of course, is the movie Advantageous, written by Jacqueline Kim and Jennifer Pang, and directed by Jennifer Pang.
There was a period of time when my father and mother were in two different countries, because my father had to go to school and work in Malaysia, and my mom wanted to raise me in the United States. She was working 2-3 jobs and was just sleeping, waking up, taking me to school, sleeping. My mom just wanted me to be a great kid. And at the same time, there was just so much stress. As I grew into an adult, I started to get a better understanding of what she was doing, what motherhood really meant. I wanted to kind of explore what a parent would be willing to do to keep their kids' futures secure. And I wanted to set that in a world that was a little bit different from ours and kind of imagine a situation where a parent would be tested to the extreme and possibly make a very big sacrifice.
I admire these female filmmakers so much. I love their work. I love what they do. Have you watched these films? Do you have any films by women that you recommend? I do recommend Laggies, and I recommend Fresh. Fresh is on Hulu. So good. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, theys and thems, thank you for tuning in to this video. I love having you here. This is part of my journey, just watching movies that I love from filmmakers that I admire, and I hope you're doing the same. That's all for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Yo!